Hello, and welcome to another episode of our podcast, Spiritually Speaking, an opportunity to talk about the spiritual life of our increasingly diverse community here in Rockland County. We are truly blessed, and I do mean that in every sense of the word, to have with us today Father Bill Cosgrove of St. Augustine in New City. Welcome, Father.
Thank you very much, Reverend Rabbi.
And we like to begin, because it's spiritually speaking, with sharing in a little bit of spirits.
Oh, that's always good to have.
I'm going to wish you a l'chaim, and a slanja.
Slanja, yes, and that's Gaelic, Irish, for all the luck.
So, and welcome. So let's get to it. Father, why don't we begin, if you could just share with us a little bit about yourself and your ministry at the church.
Very good. Well, I grew up in the Bronx, and my parents were both born in Ireland, came to this country in the early 1920s. And as I grew up with my three brothers and sister. And I had a full Catholic education from elementary school through high school, which was in Cardinal Hayes in the South Bronx. And during the time I was in grammar school, I sensed early on in my life a call to the ministry. And while I went to a regular Catholic high school, Cardinal Hayes in the Bronx, I also was serving in my parish church as an altar server. So I would say that I was always surrounded by church people, church activities. I not only was an altar server, I worked in the rectory where the business offices were held. I worked in the day camp. So you could say, in Latin, we say ex utero, which means from the womb. So almost like from the womb, I was called to the ministry. So I kind of know nothing more than life within the church and pastoral ministry. After I finished high school, I went to a college seminary, which was in mid-Manhattan, and then went into the major seminary, which is in Yonkers, New York, a place called Dunwoody, an area of Yonkers. And after that, I was ordained in 1974. So I'm just over almost 51 years ordained.
Wow.
And in that time, all of my ministry has been in parish life. So I never served in, say, hospitals or jails or schools as a full-time ministry. And so I was always in parish life. I started out in Mahopac, which is in Putnam County, and I was there for the first 6 years. Then I came down here to New City from 1981 to 1993, and then went up to Hopewell Junction for 15 years as a pastor. And then I was asked, strangely enough, to come back here to New City to be the pastor here. So when the other day when I was thinking about this, I said, my gosh, I said, I'm here over half of my priesthood in the same town, serving new people, new congregation, as well as what I would call the old-timers, those who were here when they were much younger, but now they're much older. And so it's a joy to kind of be in a place that's very familiar to me in many, many ways.
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations on a long ministry. I happen to believe that long ministries are wonderful. I'm going to ask you a theological question. Being from the Bronx and having gone to school in the South Bronx, what happened to the Yankees?
They're always a wonder. They're always a wonder. You can never know how ever a game is going to end, but they're still GOAT, the greatest of all times, no matter what.
Well, I agree with you on so many issues, but as a Red Sox fan...
you're Red Sox.
What can I say?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the composition of your congregation.
The composition of our congregation demographically would be a lot of old-time Italians Irish primarily. These would be people who moved into New City in Rockland County when the Tappan Zee Cuomo Bridge opened up back in the 50s. And so they were our first members of our parish church. And that's the way it stayed for quite a long time. People would continue to move up from the city and would move into many of our parishes that we have here. And we have, I think, 12 parishes in Rockland County. Rockland County, by the way, I don't know if you know this, smallest county in New York State. It's the smallest county.
I had no idea.
It kind of is very compact. And we have, though, 12 spread out from the north, Rockland County, all the way over to Tuxedo in western Rockland County. And so I would say right now, in the past 5 years, and we're looking forward to this, is that the demographics are changing. People either die, they move south, as you know, and there are also families that are able to afford to come up to Rockland County to pay the taxes, to pay the price of homes. And so we have a changing population right now, many of them probably being first-generation Latinos.
Interesting.
Yeah, first-generation Latinos. They are bilingual. We are, in our parish, not in a need right now to have Mass in Spanish, because most of the young families that are moving in are able to speak both English as well as Spanish. Yeah, so that would be the general thrust, the demographics of the parish.
So let me, I guess, bring you to what I think is a difficult question. You and I have both been in ministry a long time, and I have never seen a period as challenging as this, maybe 2008 during the terrible recession. But this seems even worse, and people are really suffering. And I'm curious your thoughts about what religious institutions like your church or my synagogue or mosques can do to address what I fear is going to be a growing need in our population here in Rockland.
Right. I think when you and I first started our ministry, it was understood that religion is religion, that it engages the population of our congregations, not only ritual-wise worship, but study of Scripture, etc. Now you hear the people in the synagogues and churches speaking about the phrase, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual though. So one of the things is that a lot of people in the country we live in are less religious and ritual oriented, but they still have a spiritual sense. What does that mean? That would mean, in my mind, that a lot of people today are looking first fundamentally on what is the purpose of life? The purpose of life. What's the meaning of life? Where would I find it? And that's almost preliminary to what do you believe in terms of religion. Looking for purpose and meaning of life. And I was listening to a priest the other day who was giving a talk, and he said, you know, we're hearing recently about how our young people in your synagogue as well as in mine, in my church, that one of the things that they're struggling for is that they're struggling with anger, depression, discouragement, even suicide.
Yeah.
And this priest suggested that could it be that that's the clear evidence, the result of people who have dropped away from organized religion and just kind of floating through life. That as a result of kind of like not a great sense of how God gives you purpose. God gives you meaning in life. Where do you end up? discouragement, depression, fear, anxiety. Oh, that's the result of not having a dynamic relationship with God.
Interesting.
And I think that that's one of the areas today where every synagogue and church is struggling with. We're losing the numbers, but as a result of the loss of the numbers, we are still at a point where people are pursuing.
But I want to push you a little bit, because what I'm hearing you say, and I think I'm in complete agreement, people are moving away from more organized religion. But yet, what I hear you say is there is still a deep spiritual hunger among the majority of folks out there, and that we potentially could find a way to respond to that.
Is there? I think there always was, but they found it in organized religion. In our country, and I've known also, like the Catholic Church over in places, particularly in Europe, not so much in Africa. The church, the Christian churches, the Catholic Church in Africa is quite vibrant right now, but not in the old countries of Europe, America, things like that. But I think it's the nature of the human being and the human spirit to seek something transcendent beyond him or herself. And they're just thinking there's more to it than just organized religion. I think there's something heretical about using the word organized. If it's organized, it can't be that good. Don't know.
Well, my joke is, people tell me they don't believe in organized religion. I tell them, well, come to me. I'm as disorganized as they come.
Okay.
You'd be ideal with us.
No, it and they would think if it's new.
Yeah.
That's like when we advertise all of our foods, new, refreshing, all those things. So if it's new, they want to try it, and rejecting so much of the old.
We're seeing that in the Jewish community as well. So I mentioned to you just before we sat down that I realized this year, 2025, is actually a very special year in terms of Jews and Catholics.
Yes.
Because it is the 60th anniversary of, and I think you correctly showed me how to pronounce it, Nostro Aetate, right? Which was a revolutionary work begun, I believe, by Pope John the 23rd.
Correct.
But finished, I think, after his passing.
I would say that it's still evolving.
So do you want to talk a little bit about what Nostra, since this is such a significant year for us, what it was Nostra Aetate, and how did it change, in your view, the relationship of the Catholic Church and the Jewish synagogue?
Yeah. I think when the Catholic Church opened up a council, a gathering of the Catholic leaders of the church from 1962 to 65, one of the things that occurred was there was a movement among our leaders to say, we need to have greater dialogue with all religions, okay? That would include not only Jewish, Protestant, it would include Buddhists, Mohammedans, Muslims, also atheists. We don't hear too much about that because certainly in our country, the three primary religions would be Jewish, Christian, and Muslim now.
Right.
But having Buddhist dialogue with Buddhists or anything else like that. So the key word there is dialogue. Why? Because for hundreds of years, the Catholic Church distanced itself from the major religions, that they were so different, okay? The one thing we would have theologically similar is we are a monotheistic religion. For those of you who don't know what monotheism is a belief in one God. When you go to places like Africa, you will find that it was very common, as well as in Buddhism and I think Hinduism, to have a belief in multiple gods. And the breakthrough in religion, in history, was when the Jewish religion, the Jewish people, said, no, there's only one God.
Right.
Okay? And so as a result of that, over the course of centuries, the religions separated themselves and didn't talk to one another and so on. So with that, we also had a history of a lot of anger, hostility between the Jewish religion and particularly maybe the Catholic Church, especially right after the Holocaust.
Right.
Right? So there was a sense that we need to come and talk with one another. And interestingly, starting with what is it we hold in common? So unity was what the church was looking for. And what brought us together was what unites us rather than what divides us. Many centuries, both with us and the Protestant churches, and also with Judaism, is we would sense to acknowledge with one another what makes us different. So what makes us different from, say, the Protestant churches was that we celebrate the Eucharist on a daily basis and magnify it even more on a Sunday. But we would say, oh no, the Protestants don't have the Mass like we have it, but they have the Bible. So they have the Bible, we have the Mass, and we would say that that's better. So now, as a result of Nostra Aetate, both for Jews as well as for Protestants, what do we have in common? And what we have in common with our Jewish brothers and sisters is the Hebrew Scriptures. Right. And so we would emphasize the foundation of Christianity has always been Jewish faith.
You know, growing up in the late 60s, early 70s, maybe it's not surprising to know that growing up in a fairly traditional congregation, Pope John the 23rd was considered a heroic figure, and they spoke of him often as a truly extraordinary person in modern religious history. I guess my final question to you would be, as you look back on a very wonderful ministry, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the fact that we were able to continue growing, not in numbers, but growing spiritually. I think that's the most important thing, that it's not the number of people in your congregation that ultimately matters, but rather what's the strength of the spirit of the people that's part of your congregation, you know?
That is beautiful. And with that, we're going to bring this to a close. So, Father, I'm going to ask you to grab your glass as we say L'chaim and Slanja, and have a blessed weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us on Spiritually Speaking.